6 whole months have passed since we left Sweden behind and began a new life here in the Gers region of France. A change that didn't come easy. We followed a dream to live in a warmer place, to grow our own food, to become more self-sufficient, to slow down, to reconnect with nature, and to give our children a simpler, calmer way of life. We wanted to step away from the 9 to 5 and build something of our own, something real. And that dream led us here, to the countryside, where somehow everything feels possible. For those of you who are new here, we're Olja and Gisli. Together with our 2 kids, we're building a new life far from the city, hoping to create a way of living that is free, sustainable, and truly our own. It's been 6 months since we said goodbye to our old life in Sweden, to our friends, and to the comfort of stable jobs, and unpacked a completely new life here. 6 months of adapting and transforming, of learning to balance the workload, a new language, and the constant question of financial stability. And along with the house, we didn't just inherit land. We were also welcomed by 2 wonderful donkeys, Cisco and Saxo, who've made our days brighter and a little more adventurous. Our first priority was simple, to settle into our home. A house built in 1850, left empty for the past 5 years. A place full of history, but also clearly in need of care. What we didn't realize at the beginning of this journey was just how much we had signed up for. The previous owners had left behind plenty of old furniture, which we're incredibly grateful for, because we had arrived with almost nothing from Sweden. In the first days after arriving, we focused on cleaning the rooms we planned to live in. Thankfully, attached to the big farmhouse was a small, fully renovated house, a place we could move into right away without needing to change a thing. Once we bought the basic appliances to make everyday life easier, we turned our attention to the land. The property, stretching over 2 hectares, had been neglected for years. It was covered with fallen branches, old fencing, and rusted wire, remnants of a past life that no longer served a purpose. So our first real task was to clear the land, removing sticks, tangled wire, and everything that no longer belonged. Only after that we could begin working with the trees. We planted new fruit trees, knowing they would take years to grow and produce. But also took time to trim and care for the existing ones, hoping to give them a boost and bring them back to life. By starting early, we give ourselves a chance to enjoy a harvest sooner rather than later. While the weather was still on our side, we spent as much time as we could in the garden, trying to get as much done as possible before winter took over. Creating garden beds for our vegetables was something we had been dreaming about. So we decided to go for a no-dig approach, building our beds directly on top of the soil using layers of cardboard, topsoil, and compost. For the paths, we used wood chips made from our own fallen branches, turning what was one waste into something useful. To make the process easier and the result more practical and visually pleasing, Gisli built a simple frame to shape straight, structured beds. Something that not only helps with growing, but also gives the garden a sense of order and intention. Our desire to finally move into the main farmhouse led us to focus on one essential space, the kitchen. The room we chose had once been a living room, but since all the pipes were already running along the walls, connecting it to the original kitchen next door, it made the transformation much simpler than we expected. Turning this space into a functional kitchen suddenly felt possible and, more importantly, necessary for the next step of our journey. Even though we had chosen this room for our kitchen, it felt rather dark. The small, shy window tucked away in the corner simply wasn't enough, so we decided to open up a larger window to bring in more light and reveal the true potential of the space. For our kitchen, we had a clear vision of how we wanted it to be. The most important part was finding second-hand cabinets from an older kitchen so we could preserve the character and style of the house, while still giving it a fresh, more updated touch. To paint the cabinets, we had to get creative, following a trial and error approach just to finally achieve a result that matched our vision of the perfect kitchen. These cabinets were practically saved from the dumpster as we picked them up from a trailer that had already been left out in the rain. In the end, it turned out to be both a cheap and environmentally friendly solution. In the process of building this kitchen, we had to sharpen many of our skills and learn new carpentry techniques specific to old French farmhouses. It involved a lot of reading and research, as well as advice from neighbors and friends, everything from plastering the walls and finding the right consistency to choosing materials, understanding drying times, and more. Our skill set was growing day by day. Thankfully, all this knowledge will come in handy as we continue renovating the rest of the house. As we got closer to the end, we realized we had taken quite a bumpy road with this project and that we still have a lot to learn, especially when it comes to getting paint to properly stick to old French walls.
This is finally enough to get rid of this whatever is happening.
But despite all the hiccups, we managed to push through and put this kitchen together, a challenge in itself, since none of these pieces were ever meant for this place. That meant we had to make a lot of adjustments, adding a few centimeters here and there, just to make everything fit and feel like it truly belonged. Cutting and fitting the countertops was another skill we had to sharpen, since there was very little room for mistakes. This was the only piece we bought new from a store, not second-hand, so we really had to get it right the first time. It took us a full 3 months from start to finish before we could start seeing our future kitchen truly take shape. To keep ourselves motivated, we set ourselves a deadline, New Year's, to have it completed. This had started as a thought and then became a picture, but after a few months we were standing in a kitchen that once was a living room with a tiny window. Once the kitchen was complete, we felt ready to move on to the next room. This one used to be a kitchen, but now it will be repurposed as a living room. But first things first, we had to remove the fireplace, which seemed to be too old, and the beams above it even older.
Always been curious what it says behind here. I think it's 1823. I don't know if that's when the house was built or if it's just some other reused beam from something else. In the real estate listing it said the house was built in 1850s. Definitely A3. or a very crooked fire. So up here you can see the fireplace that's right above.
As we step by step began removing the material holding it together, the structure of the fireplace became clear.
Oh no, this chimney is huge.
The truth and its condition was scary. The beams holding the entire fireplace, extending through 2 floors, including the chimney, were falling apart, and tons of material were hanging by a thread. So we decided to take the leap into something none of us had ever done before, and start removing the chimney, working our way down to the bottom floor and hoping for the best. Disassembling the chimney was a challenge indeed, but the biggest challenge of all was doing it while being afraid of heights. After this project, we can definitely say that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I managed to break the chimney down to here.
Every step made us wonder what new level of surprises we had unlocked. Once we patched up one thing, something new and even more challenging would appear. And the next surprise was indeed right around the corner. We just didn't know it yet as we were closing up the roof. The chimney was gone and we turned our focus to the bedroom right above the living room. This room seemed to be in the worst condition for several reasons. Crooked floors, beams in a questionable state, and a window we had to replace because it was falling apart. But none of the things we had planned for this room had prepared us for what we were about to face.
Okay, the chimney is now down quite a bit further. The beam is in quite a bad shape. It just turns to mush. The beam above also in quite a bad state. I think I've made up my mind about kind of how this is gonna look like. So still the same plan. Cut in half, cut somewhere here, bolt them together. But then it's gonna need more support.
So one of the main beams holding the roof in place had been eaten by Capricorn beetles, to the point where almost nothing was left. The only reason the roof was still standing was because it was leaning against the fireplace.
Did you see daylight through it?
And since we had, quite conveniently, not removed the only thing that was still holding the roof above our heads, we had to come up with a plan. Removing the entire beam wasn't an option. There was no way we could do it ourselves without hiring an expensive French company and potentially emptying our bank accounts. So instead, we decided to partially remove the damaged section and replace it with a new one. It was a nerve-wracking process, and one wrong move could have cost us more than we could imagine.
Cut to length and put 3 more. So there will be a little staggered the bolts. And then if I have some screws, I will add some screws as well.
So that part went well. We made it through with no accidents and the roof was still standing. The final step was to remove the remaining part in the living room and maybe, finally, take a breath.
It's time to get the next trailer.
But as winter was waving goodbye and spring was arriving at our doorstep, we found ourselves outside once more, this time building a herb garden. This small project ended up taking us many months to complete, Our excavator had its hoses blown more times than we could count, forcing us to postpone the final steps again and again. But now, it was finally up and running, so there were no more excuses, and it was back to work. The materials we used for this herb garden were all found around the property, blocks and stones of various sizes, and leftover material from the woodshed floor, which had mostly broken down into a mix of wood chips, soil, and partially decomposed organic matter, along with reused soil. It was fun to design and then build, but the most satisfying part was seeing it filled with herbs that had, for a long time, been waiting for a permanent place to grow. As the weather was getting warmer, our self-sufficiency plans made it clear that we needed a polytunnel, so we could grow our own food even during the colder months. We had sown our vegetables a long time ago, hoping for an early harvest, so it was time to turn the idea of the polytunnel into reality. At first, we tried to find a second-hand one that we could give a second life to, while also keeping the costs down. But after several attempts and with time running out, we eventually settled for a new one. When choosing our polytunnel, we made sure to get one with roll-up sides to help prevent moisture buildup, but also to allow fresh air in during the warmer months. It did add an extra step to the build, but it was worth every bit of it. Having experienced a week of 42 degrees Celsius heat last year, we knew just how easily plants inside the polytunnel could be permanently damaged without proper ventilation. Inside, we followed the same no-dig approach, laying cardboard on the ground, adding topsoil mixed with compost, and finishing the paths with wood chips. Once the polytunnel was ready and filled with beds, we started planting all the warm season crops.
In Sweden, around this time of the year, that would be the right time to start sowing the seeds. But here everything is so different, and I'm very glad for that. So it's time to plant all of these in their permanent places.
And just like that, after a lot of determination and hard work, we had a polytunnel ready to grow our own food. As time passes here on our farm and the season quietly mark the rhythm, we find ourselves celebrating both the small moments and the big milestones. Each chapter we write becomes a new adventure, and we feel deeply grateful to be living this life and experiencing it in this way. Working towards sustainability, freedom, and self-sufficiency makes us feel that this is where we were meant to be. We grow as we go, making mistakes, learning from them, and slowly finding our way. Giving our children this life is what we dreamt of most. Living close to nature with a chance for a peaceful life full of potential, curiosity, and purpose. A life where time feels slower and the simple things begin to matter the most. We hope to inspire those who have dreamt of doing something different to step out of their comfort zone and take that chance, the one that could change everything. 2 years ago, we wouldn't have believed this was even possible, and yet, here we are. So if you feel like following along with garden projects, farmhouse renovations, beekeeping,
And to be honest, they make me super nervous.
and a simpler way of life, you are more than welcome to stick around. See you next week.